Hi, I'm Elise and welcome to Witch Way. Today I'll be taking you through the witches of the Vampire Diaries. This series ran for a total of 8 seasons from 2009 to 2017 and stars Kat Graham as Bonnie Bennett, Paul Wesley as Stefan Salvatore, Ian Somerhalder as Damon Salvatore, Candace King as Caroline Forbes, Zach Roerig as Matt Donovan, Nina Dobrev as Elena Gilbert, and many more. It's set in the town of Mystic Falls, where the lives of a bunch of teenagers are changed forever after the Salvatore brothers come back to town. Love, death, and undeath follow, and we are introduced to a series of supernatural creatures such as vampires, werewolves, and, of course, witches. These witches can enchant jewelry to allow vampires to walk in the sunlight. They created weapons to destroy vampires, but were also responsible for the creation of vampires themselves. So let's start there. Esther Michelson is the powerful witch responsible for the creation of the vampires. As a way to protect her family, she completed a spell that would make them immortal, creating the first vampires known as the Originals. They will come up later. She, however, was not immortal and died shortly after completing this spell, though her body was preserved by her friend and mentor witch, Ayana Bennett. Centuries later, Esther was revived by Abby and Bonnie Bennett. Which brings me to the Bennett witches. Bonnie Bennett is a main character in the show. She initially thinks she is psychic before discovering her witch abilities. She grows in power throughout the series, though loses and gains her magical abilities on multiple occasions. The only other Bennett witch around her age is her distant cousin Lucy, who only appears briefly in the series. As mentioned earlier, Bonnie was assisted by her mother Abby to raise Esther from the dead, though she isn't around much before or after that. Sheila Bennett stepped in to teach her granddaughter the Bennett legacy. She was also an occult studies professor and began teaching Bonnie their craft, though she becomes overwhelmed after performing a powerful spell. Jasmine Guy also has another witchy role in the Superstition TV series as Aunt Nancy. Even after Sheila's death, she continues to give Bonnie helpful advice from the other side in times of great need. This is part of the Bennett witches' practice. They not only draw power from their ancestors, but also through the elements. The Bennett witches first arrived in Mystic Falls after fleeing, of course, the Salem witch trials. Many witches died protecting their new home of Mystic Falls, though Beatrice Bennett managed to survive. You may recognize the actress who portrayed Beatrice, Jazz Sinclair, also portrays Roz Walker in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Though by the time Emily Bennett came around, Mystic Falls had turned against witches, and when she was found out, she was burned at the stake. Bianca Lawson, who portrayed Emily Bennett, also appears as a witch in the Witches of East End TV series, and as Marin Morrill in Teen Wolf. I have already mentioned Ayana, the Bennett witch who mentored Esther, but there is also an unnamed Bennett witch, so she is referred to as the Witch of the Five, as she created the vampire hunters known as the Brotherhood of the Five. She did this to honor her ancestor, Ketsia, the most distant ancestor of the Bennett witches. She lived in ancient Greece and created an elixir for immortality. She and another witch, Silas, were in love, and on their wedding night, they would drink this elixir, foregoing their magical abilities to be together forever. But he betrayed her and drank the potion with another. Oh, don't they look familiar? As a byproduct of their immortality, there would always be a mortal doppelganger of these two. Things didn't work out for them though, as Ketsia created a dimension which traps supernatural beings when they die. Centuries later, the witch Massac helps lead a group to revive the desiccated Silas. Even in this desiccated state, he messes with the minds of those around his tomb. One of the people trying to revive him is an occult studies professor, and he begins to hallucinate his witch wife Caitlin, who passed away years earlier. Once Silas Silas is back, he continues to mess with the minds of those around him, but in the future, he regains his magical abilities. But Ketsia is still around too and ready to enact her revenge. This also ties in with the Travelers. Ketsia's creation of the immortality potion divided witches, and the Traveler faction was born. They believed in pure magic, like this immortality elixir could lead to higher magics removed from nature. The other witches disagreed and cursed the Travelers to never be able to set down roots, lest disaster befall them, and now the Travelers no longer identify as witches. Led by Marcos, they found a loophole in this curse and were able to gather if they inhabited a body other than their own, so travelled as passengers in other people's bodies. Due to her traveller roots, Catherine, one of the doppelgangers, is able to complete this passenger spell with the help of the traveller Mia. Because of their curse, the travellers now wish to rid the world of all magic but their own, especially that of the more traditional witches, some of whom came together in covens. One of these covens was known as the Gemini Coven. They are called as such due to their magic being bound to their leader, who has merged with their twin. Every generation must continue this tradition, and the witch Josh Parker is keen to see his family continue this tradition, with his children, the witch twins Luke and Olivia Parker. Penelope Mitchell is the actress who portrayed Liv Parker, and also portrayed the witch Gnida in 2019's Hellboy. The witch Hazel, Witch Hazel, was part of the Gemini Coven. One pair of witch twins was unable to complete the merge. Jo was unable to merge with her twin Malachi, also known as Kai, due to him being both a psychopath and a siphon, something else that was common within the Gemini Coven. Siphons are witches who cannot channel magic from either spirit magic or the elements, and only siphon it from enchanted items or other magical beings and then use it for their own needs. Known Gemini Coven siphons are the aforementioned Malachi, the twins Josie and Izzy, and Valerie Tulle, who was the first to become,
I think the PC term is witchpire,
also known as the heretics. Heretics are siphons who were turned into vampires. They are then able to siphon the magic from their own blood, and so are the only immortals still able to practice magic. Valerie was the first, but wouldn't be the last, and lived with the other heretics, Oscar, Nora, who was also Pansy Parkinson in Harry Potter, Mary Louise, Beau, and Malcolm, as one big, happy, dysfunctional family. For a little while, until they have a run-in with the Huntress, a vampire hunter created by those known as the Everlastings. Not necessarily witches, but these 8 shamans performed a ritual in which they sacrificed their own lives to imbue Raina Cruz with their combined lifespans and increased abilities to enable her to hunt down the vampire threat. There is another lot of witch-adjacent characters known as psychics, 2 of which are Sybil and Celine and are known as sirens. And yes, they use their voice to take control of their victims, but they also have to feed on human flesh to keep their youth. Their immortality was granted after they devoted themselves to another psychic, Arcadius. While being burned at the stake, he let out a psychic blast so great he created a whole psychic plane, which we know as Hell, making him the literal devil. But the final witches I want to talk about all hail from Louisiana. Nandy LaMarche is a witch who ran a herb store in New Orleans, which she took over from her mother, Valerie LaMarche, who was a practitioner of dark magic known as expression, in which something must be sacrificed to gain more power. Bonnie Bennett also dabbles with expression in this series, but she also learned how to draw magic from other witches from Luca Martin and gained access to many grimoires collected by his father, Jonas. Many witches create grimoires and they are passed down through families. One page that Bonnie works from is actually copied from the real world The Book of Black Magic from 1898. The Martins are actually the first male witches we see in the series.
We prefer the term warlock.
They came from Louisiana to help get back Luca's sister Greta, who, as it turns out, was working with another witch, Maddox, in the service of the original vampire known as Klaus. Klaus himself takes a trip to New Orleans where we are introduced to the witches Jane Ann and Sophie Devereaux. Sophie Devereaux works in a bar, and so did other witches in the Vampire Diaries. Gloria, who prolonged her life with the use of herbs and spells, and Bree, who we never actually see practicing magic. Based on what happened to Gloria and Bree, I don't give Sophie long for this world. This series scores kind of for lore, a little bit of history, and the craft, which was portrayed well in this series, not realistically, but well in that magic always must come with a price, whether it be spirit magic, expression, or creating a powerful item. I guess I will find out what happened to Sophie as I make my way through the originals and finally to the fully witch-based spin-off Legacies. Bonnie Bennett was definitely my favourite witch in the Vampire Diaries, though she loses and gains her abilities whenever it's convenient to the plot, and I felt like her character could have been developed a little more. Though this is pretty much a supernatural soap opera, so I think I might be asking for too much. And it ran for 8 seasons with 20 episodes per season, so expect repetitive story arcs. Let me know your favourite witch from the Vampire Diaries and what you thought of the series, which is actually based off the novel series of the same name by L.J. Smith. So if you've read that, I would love to hear some of the witch lore that might have been left out from the series. Please let me know of any recommendations for my witch lore reviews and occult connections episodes in the comments below. And please, if you liked this video, remember to like, share, and subscribe to keep me going and stay notified of new content. And as always, thank you very much for watching here on Witch Way.